Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Angel Velasquez, and this is Sports, Medicine, and Baseball. Today, we have a special guest, Blake Tiberi, that it is ex-baseball player for our Holy Cross High School. He went to University of Louisville and played for the Cardinals, and then was drafted by the New York Mets in the third round in the 2016 MLB draft. And we will have him today talking about his story, how coming from a small school in Covington, Kentucky, or Latonia, Kentucky, and went into the professional baseball career. Now he's going to tell what he's doing these days, and he's going to tell what he overcame and the injuries that he had through his career. So stay with us, because remember, on Sports Medicine and Baseball, this is where baseball meets sports medicine. Stay with us. Welcome back to Sports Medicine and Baseball. And today, like I say, we have a special guest, Blake Tiberi, that it is ex Holy Cross High School baseball players. Started Holy Cross since he was in kindergarten. I went all the way to high school, and from there, he went to University of Louisville, played baseball there, get a great career, and went to play and be drafted by the New York Mets. So, Blake, welcome to Sports Medicine and Baseball. We're really happy to have you today.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you having me on. Excited to get into it.
Hey, Blake, first, what are you doing now? Let's start with what you're doing now, because I'm a Northern Kentucky guy, and I hear about you for a long time when you were in high school. You started as a freshman, played the varsity level. You played 4 years at the varsity level, not something that not too many people do. And since then, you went to play pro, and we wonder, what are you doing now? How's life going for you?
I got no complaints. So retired fall of 24. Yeah, retired in fall of 2024. Recently been here in Las Vegas for a year now, moved out here and transitioned into the golf industry. So currently working as one of the assistant professionals at a really nice resort out here. So in pursuit of my PGA management in order to eventually get to head pro director of golf position.
Awesome. So you went from swinging a baseball bat to swinging a club, huh? How's that transition for you?
I'm just eaten up by this. I'm sure many baseball players can relate to how fine and how, perfectionists essentially we are about our swing and our fundamentals. And golf is essentially the same, where, it's just a different plane for the most part, and this ball's not moving. So to be able to just kind of work on my craft consistently and just give me that scratch of an itch as a competitor is, I fell into a very good situation here, and I know I'm definitely pursuing the right career for me post baseball.
Well, that's really good, because we all know that being a professional baseball player is one of the most difficult things to do, right? Numbers say that when you going from high school to be in a professional sport, it's about 0.5%. And those people who are drafted to make it to the major league level, those numbers, actually is 18% for the draftees. It's about 3% for the international players. That's something that I have talked before, and it's really difficult. Being drafted, one thing that is difficult too, but stay there and play, those years and actually establish as a major league player and stay as a major league player for a long time is really difficult. So I'm glad that that you have find your path, you have find your love for a different game, but it's still is something that passionate you and make you be competitive, and that's really good. I'm happy for you.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, there's, I'm sure other people you've spoken with have transitioned out of the game, whether that's, any professional athlete that's on their way out, they really don't prepare you for how to deal with it and like what's next. I found myself in this weird loophole of what am I going to do, and I really just was an athlete to my core, and I dedicated my whole life to being the best baseball player that I could be, so that I could make a career out of it. And as you mentioned, the number of people that have made it to a career in a professional sport and then they get to retire, that number is minuscule, right? So fortunately, I got my degree, so that was nothing I had to worry about. I was able to take care of that, while I was, first couple years in pro ball. So that was really important to sort of kind of set in the baseline of like, all right, I got my degree, so I don't have to worry about going back to school,
Hmm.
all that jazz. So getting the degree is really important. Then it was just, trying new things, applying for jobs and all that. That was just kind of a nightmare. And, but again, one of the things I was passionate about was golf. I got into it in the very back end of my career. COVID was my introduction to it. So being able to play rarely during the season was tough. But again, it was a good excuse to get outside. I wasn't thinking about baseball. It was just kind of just a fresh new thing that I just kind of fell in love with. And again, the little intricacies of it of, I'm a rotational athlete. This is a rotational sport. And then like many people that started golf, they're not very good at it.
Hmm.
As a hitter, man, I hate when I can't make clean, perfect contact. So that itch just started, and it's forever always going to be there because I've quickly learned in my short time in the golf industry and playing the game how difficult the sport is. So I'm just eaten up by the game, eaten up by the technicalities of it. Just there's so many variables to it, which is why I love it. There's just not one cookie cutter way, similar to the game of baseball. The greats do similar things the same way, right? If you go frame by frame and do all that stuff. But for the most part, there's so many different unique characteristics and people have their own style, right? And that's what's cool about the game of golf.
Well, now we're gonna go to definitely what bring you to everybody's attention, right? Being a baseball player. First, I hear that you went to Holy Cross, a small school in Covington or Latonia, and you went from kindergarten all the way to high school. Is that correct? How was that experience being on a small school and being able to participate on a baseball at the higher level, on a varsity level at a young age? Because I hear that you were a 4-year varsity level. So that means that when you were a freshman, you were already playing these 17, 18-year-old kids.
Yeah, I think a lot of that sort of started at least competitive wise in preparation for that with the summer program I was with. At the age of 10, I started playing travel ball, literally wasn't really a thing kind of in the area. And it was just, you play your youth sports and stuff. And, you know, my father will probably be a little bit more kind of up talk about it, and can give you a little bit more sort of insight to that just because you're not really aware of that at that age,
Mhm.
right? It was just like, all right, he just kind of threw me into a better competition because I was playing at a high level with that, against the kids my age in the smaller sort of section, right? Jump into competitive ball and, a little bit of a learning curve, kind of started slow a little bit, but through playing with better competition, obviously it ups my game, I mean, so playing with better competition, better athletes, that's only going to benefit, you as an individual athlete. By the time I got to, what was it, eighth grade, I mean, we were consistently playing 75 to 85 games a year, practice. Like that became just my itch of I just am going to be the best baseball player I can be. It's always been a goal of mine to be a big leaguer since I was a kid. That's just I came from a baseball family. My grandpa was heavily involved with USA baseball. My dad played college ball. I just fell into it. I loved it from the start. Always has been and always will be my first love. And just that commitment to wanting to be great is just what kind of helped prepare me for that. Now, obviously, the competition was there, but I had to put in the work in order to maintain that consistency that allowed me to play for at a high level for a really long time.
How was those first couple of years as a freshman? I got experience with my own kid. My own kid play freshman ball when he was as an eighth grader, play off to JV. And he faced kids that were on the top, mid 80 or low 80, not too many of them, but maybe one or two of those guys. And he was able to handle that. So how was that for you, that adjustment? That may be the struggle. I remember my kid started the season with 1 of 11 because he was like, he's bigger kids. They're stronger kids. They struggle a little bit. One of the first two at bat, he got a deep fly ball, and he thought that he was get every ball was gonna be that deep, and he starts swinging off
Hmm.
his shoes. And that mentality that you don't have when you are grade grader, how to stay gap to gap, go to the middle. and not overswing. He had to overcome that and then finish the season good. But how was for you at that time when you started?
Yeah, as I mentioned, the competitiveness I was playing at with my summer leagues was pretty comparable to like the competition that I was playing. Now, obviously, you're going to run into the guy like as a freshman. There was a couple guys that were going to run it up. I know it's funny at the time, like 88 to 90 was like really hard back. What was that in 2010, 2011, in that time frame? I mean, now, you got kids pumping mid 90s in high school, right? So
Yeah.
there's a little bit of, again, a learning curve, where you do get humbled a little bit, but, you know, I was really fortunate to where, I had that good competition sort of to prepare me for playing, against kids that were older than me. And, again, my dad says it was my college investment. I was very lucky to have a cage in our backyard, and that's all I wanted to do was just to go hit. We would just constantly try to make it difficult where he would just pepper me just hard fastballs and mixed speeds and like to just to create a game sort of environment. So a lot of credit goes to that. I mean, my dad's thrown me millions of balls, and you see it with, you see a lot with the big leaguers too. Like their first hitting coach is their dad, their BP thrower is their dad. And, if there's one person that knows the swing better than you, it's the person that sees it every day, so kind of having that growing up really helped, my development and preparation for playing at a higher level of just that competition at home as well.
No, I saw that the last 2 years that you have, I start looking at even your stat just to be prepared for talking to you, right? And I saw that your last year you hit 548. Like you have 5 homers. You really crushed the league. The year before you hit over 500 too. How was your approach if you had at that time? I know you maybe see the ball, swing the ball, but do you have any approach when you were junior or maybe varsity that you already have? You already been there for 4 years now, 3 to 4 years. So what was your approach? Is the first ball that you see there that that's your ball that you can drive? That's what the one that you work for?
I think one of the main reasons that I had so much success in high school and then into college, and I dipped away from it a little bit in pro ball, and we can get into that later, but just to kind of short track it, you know, in pro ball, I got a little bit away from like my bread and butter. Again, technology and this, that, the other. It's a way different animal. Going back to what led me to be consistent was from the time I was probably 12 and 13 is when I started to like really figure it out. That's when I just said, we're just going to pepper the ball middle backside. My hands have always been my best asset. I was really good at just putting the barrel on the ball, putting the bat on the ball, right? So wasn't really looking just at ambush, right? I trusted my ability. I trusted my hands. I trusted my swing, my approach, my plate discipline to where, I mean, you can see it at any level, right? Even in the big leagues, right? That guy's not going to put his best spot perfectly in this location every time, right? Like the hardest pitch to hit, in my opinion, is fastball up and in, right?
Mhm.
The one that's a strike, right? If a guy's going to dot that 3 times, you tip your cap, right? He's not going to do that more
Mhm.
than once or twice a year, right? So being able to understand what are my strengths are utilizing the middle of the field, hitting doubles, right? And if I get really good timing and catch it out front, I'm going to clip it pull side for a home run, right? But understanding, right, using the middle of the field, I like to say foul pole to foul pole, but again, you got to be really good to be foul pole to foul pole. But if you can just use the middle of the field, trust your hands, work the backside, right? Like that's where the hits are. I mean, that's truly, you don't see many guys hitting 320, 330 in the big leagues that only pull the ball. Those guys use the whole field. And once you figure out how to use the whole field, mix in your timing, maintain that consistency, that's when the light bulb can kind of go off for you.
I think that's a great advice because most of these kids start watching YouTube videos and things that people are doing there, and you see a couple of the people that are pulling, hitting homers, and that's what they get in love with it. And I always tell, hitting 220, and hitting, 220 and you hit 45 homers, yeah, you're gonna have a job, right? But that's not successful all the time. Hitting the ball 500 feet is not successful. You can get that one time, but it's not gonna happen every time you hit the ball. So I think that hitting the ball constantly, you say something that I never thought about it, pole to pole. I think that we all feel comfortable with what we're teach, right? So gap to gap is comfortable, but actually, if you're able to put a pole to pole, it's better than gap to gap, right? So that was a great
Yeah.
point that nobody ever have say, at least to me. That's a good point for the kids out there to listen. Um, Now let's go to trans. going to college. I know you stay in Kentucky, right? You stay from northern Kentucky to 100 miles south to Louisville. Not your family can go and watch you. Your friends could go there and watch you. How was that transition to go to college?
It was very unique, right? I went from a little school, right? I graduated with like 120 kids. Now I'm going to a major university, right? And I've got 25,000 people on campus, and it's kind of a little bit of a culture shock the first time you're on your own. Again, I was very lucky. I went to a program that was like very structured. My head coach had a military background, so like I credit that to why I'm a little bit robotic today. Um, but it really just kind of woke you up, and fortunately, I had a really large freshman class. There were 13 or 14 of us, and we went down early, got, a little bit of taste of what college life is like from a training standpoint. We were working out 5 days a week, doing 2 days on top of going to, each of us got about 6 credit hours, right? So I got a little bit of experience of what the schoolwork was like, what it's like to, get your butt kicked in the weight room. I mean, it was very much a culture shock to kind of see, all right, this is just the beginning. And as soon as that fall calendar started from when the semester began, then it was like, all right, we're off and running, right? You're in class from 8 to 12, and then you got practice, and then you got, study hall, you got gym, you got to take care of. So it really, really grows your ass up really quick. So, again, very lucky to kind of go to the program that's just kind of laid the foundation to, be successful and how to manage being an athlete in college.
And it's a little bit different now, because when you did it, you're saying, 13, freshmen in that class. Now you have the transfer portal where a lot of these young kids that are coming and trying to go to a D1 program, they may not have the chance to go there because there's somebody transferring from a JUCO, from another school that are trying to go a little bit higher and higher and higher. So things are a little bit different now, like you say. Same thing with travel ball. Everything's a little bit different.
Hmm.
I may be a little bit of the conversation is going out of track right now, but my mind is getting me there. So
Oh, good.
what you think about that, the way that it is right now? Um, what you think about I will say lack of opportunity for high school kids to come and go to the D1 programs because there are other kids that are transferring. What do you think about that?
I've got some mixed feelings on the whole transfer portal thing, and the whole NIL stuff. I mean, they're treating them like free agents now. Again, I'm all for the athletes getting paid, but I think they're going to have to start getting some contracts involved or something, because I think it's a little bit ridiculous that you can just hop the portal if you weren't going to get thousands and thousands of more, all that stuff, regardless. The positive on that, though, I think, is that it's making the game much more competitive.
Mhm.
Obviously, Major League Baseball has shrunk, right? Like the game is way more competitive now, I think, than it ever has been. And that just kind of at the top, it's going to trickle down in effect, right? So, like in Division 1, right, there's maybe a few less roster spots, right? And now you've got the transfer portal kicking in. Okay. But that's affecting everything down because those good players that may have an opportunity at this school, they can't get into that school now. So they got to go to like a JUCO, right? That's making the JUCOs way more competitive. Right. I'm sure there's plenty of JUCOs that got really good kids that are going to have opportunities in a rotation. They're Friday, Saturday, Sunday guy that got a chance to get drafted. Right. The same thing with the hitters, the defensive guys. I think it's one of those things. Everyone's got an opinion on it, right? Like from a game perspective, though, I think it's made the game much more competitive. Are there less opportunities? Yes, but you know, at the end of the day, numbers don't lie. If you're putting up numbers at a junior college, people are going to come watch you. If you're putting up numbers at a Division 2 school, people are going to come watch you, right? And that's just going to force the Power Fives or the D1s. They see a kid, 2 miles, or two hours down the road at a smaller school hitting 450. Okay, let's go see what this guy's about, right? Or
Mhm.
that JUCO arm that's sitting 94, 96 out of the bullpen. All right, okay. Go to a place. I think it's important that kids go to a place where number one, most importantly, they can play, but the opportunity for development is there. All right. Like again, I'll talk about how lucky I was to go to Louisville. right? I was surrounded by fantastic players and fantastic coaches that could develop me and maximize my potential to make me better. You need to find a program or a place to play that's going to give you those opportunities to play, to compete at a high level, and to develop. I think that's the most important thing. And I think, again, I think the universe works in a weird way. It's going to lead you to that right place and that right fit, whether it's your first stop or your second stop, right? That first stop could be your stepping stone to put your name on the map, right? And now a school that you never thought that you could go to is now saying, "Hey, we'd like to have you come play for us." Little things like that.
I think it's a good perspective. I was listening what somebody said the other day about it is depending what the kid want. You want to have the university experience and go to a school that you have more playing time. You want to be competitive and you want to be everybody want to be competitive, but you want to try to go to a next level and really really you had the drive and the you got the skills. Maybe go to that D1 school and maybe be the first or second year and just be training with the best of the best of the best, and you get better. At some point you're gonna have that chance, right? You're gonna work hard to have that chance in your third and fourth year, and then you can go to a next level, right? So I think now people are being maybe staying a little bit longer in college because they are bouncing around. And it's true. You say something that is really true is that at the end of the day, the game is better. And to be able to be professional, you need to be one of the best. And if you are not one of the best, well, you should not be drafted, right? So, it's one of those things
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, if you look at it, you were smart enough that you got your education, right? But not everybody's like that. People may go there, they think that they wanna, and they have the skills, and they go drafted, and things don't happen. Injuries happen too. Sometimes not your skills or your ability, is just luck, right? You get injured and you could not keep going. So obviously, sounds like Louisville was really fun for you. I saw a couple of clips. You get big hits there. Looks like you were having a lot of fun. Tell me about that, draft day. I remember when you were drafted because I remember people talking about it, in this area. I know you were in the third round. That was 2016, if I'm not wrong, that you were drafted, drafted by New York Mets. Another reason why I remember because I'm a New York Mets fan. So tell me about how was draft day for you and your family, man.
I One of the coolest experiences for me. We're in super regionals. It was on a Thursday, and we had like our practice, like our NCAA sanctioned practice, right as like draft day was kind of day two was kicking off, and um, we had a watch. We every year we have a watch party because again very lucky. I had a lot of very good players I played with that were going the first or second round my 3 years at school. So we always kind of had that tradition of watching because we knew who was going where for the most part during the draft process. After kind of speaking with my agents on Friday night, they knew it was going to be in that kind of 3 to 5 window, and
Hmm.
it was just kind of. I was like, guys, I'm going to be gone for 2 hours at practice. Like, I flipped the keys to them. My agents were awesome. Joe Bick and Brett Bick with Pro Star Management at the time. They're now Meister Sports. They, again, have nothing but good things to say about them. You know, took care of everything for me. We were in the middle of BP at practice, and um, we had a pitcher that was drafted. Drew Harrington was drafted by the Braves in the third round. About wherever the Braves was. Shortly after we were in BP, I was in the cage, and our trainer came up to me and just like, hey, just showed me his phone and saw I was drafted. And it was just such a surreal moment to everything you work for as a kid to get that opportunity and to be able to share that moment with my teammates, like, everyone coming up. Like, it was such a special moment that, again, one of the greatest days of my life.
Think about what difference right now. Obviously, you were playing at that time. You were not done with the season, but now everybody is like
Hmm.
cameras everywhere. Think the difference how it is now with the social media and the family, and they goes to a place, or they may be now, in the draft that in obviously the first round, they are on a place all together. And I know Joe. Joe Bake is a really nice guy. I just talked to him probably 3 4 weeks ago. I know him for a long time since I was in my other practice in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Really nice, really, really, really nice guy. And just if he's listening, I know that you appreciate his job, and he's a great person to be involved with guys like you. Guys, young guys like you. He had the interest to help you guys to get the best for you. Whatever they get after is extra, but they're always trying to loot the best for you. And that's why he bring players when I was working in Cincinnati, and he bring players for evaluation. He was always interested on what is the best for them, not for the organization, obviously, not for them as a agency group. It's more what is the best for the player at this time with this injury. So I'm glad that you were able to work with him, and that's really fun to hear. So obviously you went to the Mets. You go to the minor league system, and you get injured at some point, right? I think it was in 2017. Is that correct?
Yeah, so my first full season, yeah, I had the UCL tear. Uh, Honestly, that probably stemmed back from just the overuse. Again, I was a really good mover. I was just pretty mobile for the most part, and I was able to get away with just kind of being lazy. And you know, again, one of the things that we miss out on youth sports now, I think, just with the number one, the over specialization and the early specialization. You got to be an athlete. You got to be able to move. You got to put your body in uncomfortable positions and be able to move properly. I'm sure you understand this hits home for you being in sport medicine of being able to move properly. Overhead athletes and rotational athletes, especially, everything's connected from the ground up. If we don't know how to use that, we're done for. Right. So I was able to kind of gut through it a little bit in spring training, but, long story short, MRIs, second opinions, all that. UCL tear was a little bit chronic. So unfortunately, that was just a huge just dapper on my first full season. Again, that allowed me to finish my degree though. I got to do an internship and knock out 17 hours of the important in-person stuff I needed to take care of that I wouldn't been able to take care of while I was playing minor league baseball. So again, I was able to get my degree, got my rehab, everything got done chronologically in time to be cleared for spring training. So the process was a little bit more sped up for me just because I wasn't a pitcher. So I was able to kind of get going a little bit quicker. But again, that also benefited me to kind of become a utility player. So with my arm not being fully 100%, I was able to then transition to second base and start to learn a new position and just put another bullet in the chamber. So again, as much as it sucked, I hated it. I don't wish it on anyone. It's a very brutal, recovery process and rehab to get back. But another just kind of challenge you got to get over. And again, prepared me for more of my career, more in life. It's just one of those things. If you look at it with a positive mindset and try to, grow from it and learn from it and all that, it's only going to benefit you. So I'm fortunate. Glad it happened. Long down the road, really benefited from it. Arm came back healthy. Learned more about the kind of health of it from, okay, how do I avoid something like this happening again? You know, really started to pay attention to like arm care and my body care and like the nutrition value and all that sort of stuff. I mean, because once you get into professional baseball, like your body's your job. It's a 12-month thing, which again, I loved. If you look at anyone else doing it, they love it. They're eaten up by it. But you got to be able to have the discipline to stay consistent with it. And, I was fortunate enough to be able to just have that instilled in me at a young age that this is how you go about it, right? Being a professional, being surrounded by high level individuals, athletes, all that sort of stuff. So that really played a role into like how to get through that, right? And how to lean on other people and, use the resources around you to maximize the potential.
You have said a couple of things that I hope that my kid and the kids in the team actually, and anybody's listening out there. Number one, to be a baseball athlete, you first need to be an athlete. The rotational aspect is something that you probably didn't know in high school, and now
No.
we know, and that's one of the things that we're trying to bring to the school. We bring this strength conditioning guy that I work with the kids. From October to December, maybe the first or 2 weeks of January, he came and worked with them too. That probably helped them in the long run. First time that we have done that. So I hope that next year we can do it again. We continue doing this to the program. I think that working with the understanding your body and understanding how you prepare your body to what you are going to, it is the most important part. The other thing is you say overuse, you say chronic, you say things that probably at that time we may not be looking for, but now we do look for. When the kids come to my office, we got an ultrasound, right? I can evaluate the UCL. I can see if you have a
Hmm.
chronic UCL tear that is not a tear, it's a laxity. That elasticity that the ligament has, we don't see that on an MRI. The MRI can show something if it's torn or not torn, or it's thick because it's being used. But the MRI doesn't show the elasticity part. There's now MRI with valgus stress. There's now doing MRIs with stress that can tell you about the separation of those bonds from the ligament. But we know and we look for it. That's what we find out more UCL tears chronically now than we used to do before. And that's important that you say, because coming from somebody who went through it, that can explain it by own experience is the best for kids out there and families out there. And I got two young kids right now that I have seen for a long time. I got one that is 12, 13 years old, got a UCL partial tear, get a PRP, was able to do really well. Now he has a little bit of an injury again, and we're trying to go through it, right? But now it's an important part of his career where we have to get it right so he got a chance to play next level. But the rotational aspect is really important. I'm glad that you say it. The other thing is that it's about life. That baseball teach people is life is that baseball is like life lesson. Baseball teach you how to go through life, and struggles on life come, but things happen for a reason. That injury that you had give you the opportunity to take care of other things that now is important for you, that now is part of your life, that you may not understood at that time, right? You may not even realize at that time you were going through
Hmm.
the emotions, but now you're mature enough and you look back and say, well, I don't wish that happened, but actually helped me.
100%. I mean, again, there's some grieving. Obviously, anytime something like that happens, the first time really I was, maybe what are the games taken away from you, right? And you miss that camaraderie. You're not with the guys every day. You're not in the clubhouse. You're not in a uniform. Like, it sucks. But again, it was just all right. Like, I can't remember if the surgeon David Allcheck did my surgery up at
Yeah, New York.
HSS in New York. Yes, yeah. So I can't remember if it was him or the head of PT with the Mets when I was going through it. He said, "You've got one opportunity to get this right, so that you don't have any issues with it again." And I was like, well, I hate that I'm not playing. I hate that I'm not, with everything going on right now, I'm not doing my job. Right. So I took it to heart of like, I'm going to do everything right by the books. Okay. So that I can get strong from this. And then I don't have to deal with lingering injuries or another setback. Right. Cause if you ask anyone, having an injury is just,
Oh,
it's the worst to not be able to you work so hard in the off season to prepare yourself for a full season of wear and tear at games and everything in between, you know, to be out of that equation. It's just, you hate to see it. You hate to hear it. I mean, I hated seeing other people get hurt. I mean, it's just one of those things like when you're out there, you can see the grief of like, the other players on the field have when someone goes through an injury, because it's just like they understand what goes into being an athlete and how difficult it is to get your body where it is, to where now you've just taken a bunch of steps back. And then it's like, all right, now I got to do all this rehab and I got to build back up to where I should be. But then you look up and now it's 6, 8 weeks have gone by. That's, you know, close to half. That's 40% of your season. It's like, so you really got to take value in understanding this could be your only opportunity. You need to do things right. You need to do it by the book. You need to, if you got to go a little bit slower to get it right, get it right. Right. Like you can't just fast forward to it and assume everything's going to work out. Right. Because if you take shortcuts, that's where you start to see the line of like people that make it and people that don't.
um, Eduardo Perez told me this the other day. He say, good things come when you do the little things. And those little things are the ones that may drive you crazy when you are rehabbing. But
Hmm.
I tell my patients, um, an injury can do one or two things. When you realize that this is not for you and you realize that you don't want to put the work for it and it's okay, or you push hard and make you a better athlete. Those are the
100%.
things.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, injury or not, I mean, again, that was preached to me in college. Like, you got to do the little things right. again, basic fundamentals. Like you see it at spring training. Those guys are doing the same drills. They're on their knees, just doing little, just watching the ball into their glove, right? Watch any good big league player. The teams at the end of the year, you know, like the Dodgers, Freeman's out there still doing picks, World Series Game 7, right? You know, anyone with Ron Washington, that's going to be their coach. They're out there early work doing the same fundamentals every day, right? Because that's just, again, fall in love with the process, but again, doing the little things right, right? Like why those guys are in the big leagues is because they do the little things right. They don't mess up. They're most consistent with it. You know, the physical errors will happen, right? I mean, you're going to get a bad hop. You're going to get one off the fringe or the lip, or, you know, it's going to be a hot day and there's not going to be as much water on the field as there was in the first 2 innings when they watered it, right? You're going to get a top spinner. You're going to get something weird, right? The physical one's going to happen, but it's the routine one, 2 outs. You're down, you know, you're up one. You can't let that guy on third score on a routine ground ball that you botch. I mean, it's just, again, little things, doing them right on the field, off the field. You know, we had Lance Berkman come talk to us one time, and something he said was, how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? You're not just, you know, if you're doing the little things right, you know, behind closed doors when no one's watching, right? Like, you know, like Perez said, the good things will come your way, right? But if you're only doing it for show and people are watching, right, then you're going to take shortcuts. That's when you start to level off.
That's you know, obviously it's an important thing for us to listen, and for the young kids, you know, same thing happened with my profession, right? You can go, you can cut corners, and you know, can become, you know, you still can become a physician, right? Is you want to be the best out there for your patients, and it's having the pride to do that too, you know. And you know, I hope that this young generation, the idea for me is teach my kids, you know, doing the right way. And you know, not saying that the right way is the old way. I'm getting to that age that I can say now is our life was different and blah blah blah. But the idea is that you have to put effort. Things come too easy. Things are too easy for everybody now. You know, you lose your phone, you pay $5 more and then you got a new phone right away. You know, you lose a phone. When I was my age, you didn't have insurance. You just need to try to buy another one, and they're expensive. So right now, everything's on your hands. Everything easy to have. Everything is easy to move on, because there's something else coming on, and life keep going, and that's the difficult. And in baseball, you can't do that. The baseball gods will bring you will bring you down to earth. You can be hitting 500 today, and then suddenly you go 0 for 15, and you're not 500 anymore. You know, so you need to do the little things. And you know what I tell about my poor kid hitting 1 of 11, right, starting his you know, high school, and he was down. And I say, dude, you have to go. What bring you here is hitting opposite side. Stay middle to the other side, and the ball come inside, and you will pull it naturally because you will pull it. But don't think pull, pull, pull. Think middle to the other side, and then suddenly he went back to the principal. What bring you there? And then he was able to overcome and get a good year. You know, Pete Rose said, "Don't change your swing. Your swing get you there. You know, you change your approach. Where you stand on the box, in front of the box, by the box. You know, don't change too much. Just go back to the principle." Sounds cliche and sounds sometimes, you know, maybe too easy to say, right? But you go back to the principle and the little things, and big things will happen. Thank you for that information.
And this was the end of the first part of this episode.